Hi and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the Rollerblade Crossfire. Specifically the boot, because I bought this boot only, even though you see a frame and wheels attached here. This is Rollerblade's first slalom boot, and I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on it. This is not a long-term review kind of video. This is an initial impressions. I've skated about 10 hours in this, so more or less broken in, and I've used 3 different frames that I had before I bought the boot on them as well. So I'm basically just going to cover the boot itself, show you what that looks like, and then I'm going to get into my list of pros and also my list of cons for this particular boot. I am an urban skater, a city skater. If you're not familiar with the channel, there are a ton of videos that show you how I like to skate. I know this is a slalom first design on this, to be clear, and I am not a slalom skater. I am not a freestyle skater, so I'm going to comment on this as a general skating skate and an urban or city skating. By the way, the frames I've used on this are these FR, I think they're the Deluxe V3. It's a 4x80 flat frame. I've also used what's currently mounted on my FRSL, the Endless 90. 4x90 configuration. I hadn't tried the 3x110. And also I've used the Endless Arc 5-wheel rocker frame on these as well. Okay, so let's take a look at the boot. I think it's a handsome boot, personally. Everyone has their own opinions on aesthetics, but I think it looks nice. So let's go over, the features of it. It is a pretty standard setup for a carbon slalom boot. You have the carbon shell, as I mentioned, not heat moldable, by the way. You have a plastic cuff up here, a pretty low cut back here, which is, again, pretty common for a slalom skate. Plastic buckle here that's riveted to the cuff. And then obviously it just goes into on the other side here. The strap itself is, pretty standard. It's not cheap or anything. It's nothing special either. The cuff bolt, by the way, I think this is a really cool thing, and I believe this is unique to this boot. I could be wrong, but you can spin this 360 degrees, and what I mean by that is that it's not notched. It's not like you just get the cardinal directions, like up, down, left, and right. You can position this little arrow anywhere along this circle that you want. It spins freely. Moving down the boot, we have this neoprene section here where you get some flex, and then you come down to the 45 strap, which is a ratcheting buckle. Pretty standard for a 45-degree strap. Again, and the buckle material, I'll be honest, the teeth are a little hard to pull out on these. Similar to the top teeth part, the part with the teeth, it's a pretty standard. It's not like cheap or flimsy. It's pretty standard quality on the strap there. And then obviously you've got your laces as well. You can see some eyelets down there. There are 2 eyelets on the cuff. And then there's like 5 or 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's 5. There's one under this strap here. 5 eyelets down here on the mid and foot and the toes. And you got your 2 eyelets up here. The tongue is, it's actually kind of beefy in this section here. So this section with whatever this material is, this pleather or this synthetic material here, everything under that, it has like a, it's like a denser foam there, a more rigid foam. So it's actually got some meat to it. Like this is actually a little more stiff than my FRSL tongue. Stiff part ends down here where this like pleather ends. So it's a nice stiff, I don't know, some people may like that, some people may not. Like getting it tight this way is a little bit harder because it's kind of chunky and rigid. But it also gives you, obviously it gives you support, and it also kind of protects your ankles from this strap if it's really tight. So, that would probably be a preference thing, whether you like this style boot or tongue or not. Moving down the boot, we have our plastic sliders and toe guards. Those are pretty standard. The mounting system is 165 millimeters. Even though these slide for adjustment, not so that you could fit like a 180 millimeter as well. This is a 165 mount boot. And it's really nice though that these slide, because you can adjust, you can obviously fine tune the front to back alignment of your frame. Like another one of those nice little touches, which it's got this strap here that holds this plastic bit in place, and it doesn't slide left or right, and it doesn't come off the boot, which is nice. By the way, do not put the strap under this. It's just going to get caught. I believe, I could be wrong, I believe this is designed to hold this plastic part in place, not this part. By the way, also, I guess worth pointing out is that there's like these, call them pressure relieving straps, meaning, it kind of spreads out the pressure that comes down from this plastic strap across this pleather material here, so that it's not just the strap digging into your foot on both sides. All right, so these wrap over each other as you tighten it down. What's cool about this that I haven't really seen in another boot, again, I'm not like some slalom boot expert, is that this is removable, which is really nice. So it's a Velcro strap, and what's cool about it is you can take it off. This part is also held on with hook and loop material or Velcro, and you can just fully remove this, which is really nice. Obviously these are metal loops here, they remain. Inside you will find a removable insole, which is nothing to write home about. It's not the worst, it's not the best. It's an insole. Underneath the removable insole is another layer of padding, which I'll talk about later. Down here, there's, padding on the left and right in the back around your heel and ankle that come out. So yeah, that is pretty much the boot and, its features. So first I'll start with my list of pros, and these aren't necessarily in a particular order. The first pro I want to talk about is that it's available boot only. A lot of times, especially in like the slalom and urban, segment of inline skates, a lot of times you can only get boot only because a shop or a retailer is willing to break a boot down, not because the manufacturer sends it to them as boot only. So thank you, Rollerblade, for offering this as a boot only from the manufacturer. Not only is it cheaper for consumers that already have a frame and wheels, it's also just less wasteful. The next pro is the price. Rollerblade did not send me this, and I did buy it, and if you were to buy it yourself, it cost me $320 US. And that was, again, just for the boot. The full skate is $440 and US, and that comes with a frame and wheels, obviously. Comes with a 4x80 rockerable frame. The axles are rockerable, and I believe, I'll have to double check, but I believe some of the smaller sizes come with a 4x76 frame. I think the price for this particular boot, considering it's from Rollerblade, a quality manufacturer, it's a carbon skate that's for slalom, you know, is its design intent, but also potentially an urban skate is the way it's marketed. For $320 boot only, I think it's in a really good position in the market, honestly, because there's not much out there that meet that criteria. The next is a big one for an urban skater such as myself, and that is support. I was not sure what I expected from a plastic cuffed carbon skate. My FRSL, I have another carbon skate here. And these are slalom boots as well. This is the FRSL, by the way. This is a different price range category. This is a much more expensive boot than this. But I wasn't sure what to get out, or what I would get out of a plastic cuff. This is a very supportive boot, and I think this is supportive because it actually comes up higher than my FRSL. So despite having a plastic cuff, it gives a lot of support, and that's really welcome as an urban skater for sure. The next one is also very welcome as an urban skater and kind of unheard of in the slalom carbon boot category, and that is the shock absorption. Below that removable insole, as I spoke about earlier, is actual padding. It's a thin layer. It's nothing crazy, but it makes a really big difference for rough asphalt, for landing jumps, for riding stairs, etc. The things you do as an urban skater. So really great, especially the combination of the good support and the shock absorption make this very appealing as an urban skate. The next is the quality of the materials. As you hold it in your hand and you look at it, the quality's good, the craftsmanship's good. You know, there's no glue seeping out anywhere. The seams are all nice and flat. The stitching looks good, and you know, overall build quality of the materials, it just feels like a well put together skate by, you know, a manufacturer with a pedigree such as Rollerblade. Next up is that 360-degree adjustable cuff that I was talking about. I think that's a really clever design, and I'd like to see it, you know, offered in more boots. And lastly is, again, another minor thing, but I love that the toe strap is removable. I don't need the toe strap, so it's nice to be able to take it off because I think it looks better without this toe strap. Or I'm calling it a toe strap. I don't know if that's the right name, but that's what I'm calling it. So now I want to talk about the things I don't like about this skate. And there's one really big one that I'm going to talk about first, and then a list of nitpicky things. Big one I want to talk about first is heel lift. I have a significant amount of heel lift in this boot. So according to Rollerblade's size chart, I should be in a size EU41, and that is because my foot is 26.5 centimeters long, and the size range for the 41 tops out at 26.5. It's 25.9 or something to 26.5. So I was excited because I was at the top end of the range for my size, which is where I want to be because I want a performance fit. I want something that's as snug as I can tolerate. When I first put the 41 on, the length felt pretty good. But then I mounted the frame and the wheels and I stood on it out in my driveway and felt immediate, significant heel lift. Like, again, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but it was a lot. So I immediately went back inside before I skated them so I could return them and emailed the shop I got them from asking if I could try a size down and exchange. So I had the size EU40 delivered, and that is, the top end of that range is 25.8 centimeters. I believe it's 25.3 to 25.8. It's 0.7 centimeters smaller than my foot, or shorter than my foot. So I put the size 40 on, and as expected, I felt really crammed in there. I didn't know if I would get past the break-in on the size 40 with my foot, and partially because I knew I wasn't supposed to be in that size according to the size chart, and also just the way it felt. It was very crammed and tight. It's a carbon skate, it's not heat moldable, and I didn't know how it would work out. But as I said, in the 41, the heel lift was completely unacceptable for me, so I had to try the 40, and that's what I did. So the first thing I tried on the 40 was these endless 90 frames, the 4x90 configuration, and the heel lift was still there. It felt like it was mostly gone. I skated them for a session or two, and I was just kind of trying to ignore the heel lift that I was still feeling. Then I put this frame on, the Endless Arc, which is a longer frame and more likely to expose a heel lift problem, and the heel lift got worse, and it hasn't gone away since. I feel it on this 4x80 setup. I feel it all 3 frames I've used. And I don't know exactly what's causing it. I have a few speculative theories. One is that I feel like there's maybe a missing eyelet here, or maybe even 2. Meaning there's too much space between like the last eyelet on like the midfoot and the first eyelet on the cuff, and you can't really cinch down the laces there. Basically the area between the 2 straps. The other thing is that the heel pocket itself, it just feels bigger and wider than like my FRSL. The other thing I noticed is that the FRSL padding in the heel, like I can't show you very well on camera, but the padding is definitely much bigger in the FRSL, where I get very good heel lock, and those fit me pretty well. The size 40 is like workable. It's mostly broken in. My right foot still hurts a little bit when I start a session in these, but it's not really an enjoyable experience because they're too small and I'm still getting heel lift. So I honestly don't know how much of a rotation these boots will make in my collection of skates, because like I'm loose back here and I'm crammed up here, and it's just, I'd rather skate something that fits better. Now, of course, everybody's ankles are different. Everybody's feet are different. What doesn't work for me may work for you. Again, the size 40 heel lift is like, it's tolerable for me personally, but in the 41, completely unacceptable. No, I'm not saying this boot is for no one, but in its current form, it's not for me. By the way, the skate, barring the discomfort I feel because it's a little too small, and the heel lift I'm feeling, like other than that, it skates fairly well. The shock absorption is really nice, like I mentioned. The power transfer is pretty good. It's a little bit less than I get in my SL, but that is because there's no shock absorption. So like the more padding you add, the less power transfer you'll get. And I feel it, but it's not like a massive difference. I'd probably prefer the shock absorption as an urban skater to like a slightly better power transfer. But so they skate pretty well, but like, I'll be honest, it's never really that comfortable for me because, and again, I'm only 10 hours into breaking in skates. The general rule is 10 to 20 hours for breaking in skates. So maybe these will feel better. I have to put at least another 10 hours on these to see. But it's just not a super enjoyable experience because of the fit. By the way, I have a medium width foot. I don't think this is a narrow boot. I don't think it's particularly wide. Honestly, people say FRs run wide. I have a medium foot. I have never had an issue in my FR SL. I've never had a blister in those, and it doesn't feel all that much different to this. Again, maybe my foot just works for both skates. Other people may have other issues. I know people are concerned about width. I know, like, I've heard that the twister is a little narrow and people are wondering if this is narrow. I don't know. I'd say it feels about medium. It's impossible for me to get an accurate measurement. You'd have to ask Rollerblade, you know, what all the dimensions are in here, because I don't know. I know that my foot works in it. It doesn't feel tight. It doesn't feel loose. It feels pretty good to me. So I also mentioned a list of more nitpicky kind of cons or downsides to the boot, and I'll go through those now. First is the default lacing, and this is something I fixed myself in 5 minutes. And if you're like me, you'll probably throw wax laces on and lace them however you want anyway. But the way these were laced by default is that the laces entered the eyelets from the top. I'll show a photo on screen, instead of coming through the bottom, and it made it really hard to pull them tight. When I switched it to the bottom in the photo I'll show you, it made it way easier to get them tighter. Next con is, again, this is a small one, and I honestly think it fits like the price range, but the slider, the plastic on the slider and the toe, I wish they were beefier. I wish they were a little denser. I don't know if this will focus properly for you, but I scraped this twice doing parallel slides. I haven't even fallen on it, and the next scrape here will probably dig into the screw. So I wish this was a little more durable. The next one is that this, couple things here. This top buckle is plastic, which means I haven't had any problems with it, like it doesn't pop open or anything on me, but it's less durable. So in a fall, it's more likely to get to a point where you have to replace it because it's made out of plastic. Additionally, it is riveted to the cuff, which means when you replace the buckle, you're replacing the cuff, and vice versa. If you replace the cuff, you're replacing the buckle. I haven't seen parts for order online, but hopefully those will show up soon. I didn't do much searching, but I couldn't find replacement parts for this boot yet. And last, and again, I think this fits in with the price range of this boot. Like I think a better analog for this boot is something like an FR Spin, which is also a plastic cuff, carbon slalom freestyle boot that's much cheaper than, like, again, my FR SL, which is an $800 skate. And like the FR Spin, this Rollerblade Crossfire is not heat moldable. And it's a con overall for like any skate, but I guess if you look at the price of this boot, it's not really a huge downside because it kind of aligns with what you're paying for. But just know that carbon is unforgiving and you cannot heat mold this particular skate. So in closing, I kind of hated making this video only because I really wanted to like this boot better. And I do like the boot. I like a lot of things about the boot. It's just the problem is the one thing that's wrong with it for me is fit, and that changes the whole experience for me. The best thing I can do is just be honest, because the way I see it, one of two things is happening here from my perspective. Either I just don't have the right anatomy for this boot, or maybe it's a design that needs some iteration. I did send my feedback directly to Rollerblade because, like a lot of people watching this video, I'm just someone who really loves inline skating. I want everything to be good in the industry and do well. So I was discussing my thoughts on this boot with a fellow skater, and they had a contact at Rollerblade and said, you know, maybe you could give the feedback directly to them. And Rollerblade actually replied to my email, and they were thankful for me for compiling all the feedback and sending it to them. And of course, I'm thankful that they read my feedback and replied. So you never know what'll happen in the future if they do end up making revisions to this boot or something. Again, I'm not claiming that there's a problem with it as a fact. Like, it could just be my foot doesn't work well with it. But if they do make revisions to it in the future, I know that I've at least gotten my feedback out there because they won't necessarily, you know, see this video. So I'd love nothing more than to be here in a future time telling you how much I love this boot. So with that, that is the end of this one. Thank you for stopping by and listening to me ramble on a couch for, I don't even know how long this video is going to end up being, but thanks for sticking with me. As always, thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next one.